Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Really excited. We got a guest back on the show, high demand, Dr. Bernd, Friedlander. Bernd's a great guy, known him for many years. He is a fountain of knowledge on many different health topics. We're going to dive in. Let's see what we hit. I know we're going to be coming out of the gate talking about collagen, reducing inflammation, sunlight, 5G, epigenetics. We'll dive in and see where the conversation goes. Dr. Bernd, how we doing, man? What's cooking?
How are you, Justin? I'm doing great.
Doing well.
Feel wonderful. Yes.
Good. Excellent. So let's start off. We were talking kind of pre-show. Let's kind of take that here. You were a chiropractor for the 1984, I think, was it the Summer or Winter Olympics?
It was the Summer Olympics.
So that was
84
LA, right?
in LA, yeah. As a matter of fact, I got selected for the 1980 Olympics, but there was a boycott in Russia, so we never went there.
Wow.
So what we did is we took over from 80 and training the athletes from 78 to 80 while I was going through chiropractic school. And I also had a degree in physical therapy and exercise physiologies and a strong nutritional background. So that helped me with, working with athletes. And I myself played professional soccer. I ran track in college. I swam in college. So I did a lot of sports. So I was into the sports arena quite a bit. And having 8 years of physical therapy training from 72 to 78, that seemed to have helped me the most, in preparing myself for training and rehab and nutrition and getting into chiropractic work. All of that helped. And
yeah, we were chatting earlier. So you had to have had a connection to get picked to be the doctor of the 1980 and 84 Olympic Games. So how did that happen?
Oh, boy, it's karma. What happened was I was finishing up my degree in Glendale, getting my LACC chiropractic license. Sure. And I wanted to be closer to the ocean, to the beach, because I grew up there. And I moved down to Santa Monica and had bought a house down there. And I was going to UCLA and working out every day. And then I developed relationships with coaches and athletes there. They started realizing that I had some knowledge about training and rehab and also injuries because of my physical therapy. And they found out I was going through chiropractic school and I was getting my degree there. One of the coaches, Bob Bush, they named the stadium after him at UCLA. He asked me to work with him and many of his athletes. And they were training for the 84 Olympics because the 80 got boycotted. And we were working for the 80 at that time with Bob Bush, but we got, canceled. So we started the program again at UCLA. And then I gravitated to Pat Connolly, who was training Evelyn Ashford, the fastest 100, 200 meter women athlete in the world at that time. And then I was working with Bob Kersey, who was who took over for Bob Bush as the head of the UCLA track and field coach. And he started using me for all of his athletes and training them and rehabbing them and giving them exercise programs. And then work on nutrition as an alternative to steroids, because that was my background there at UCLA, was working on alternative to steroid programs for the athletes. And then I started to gravitate with him, and all these athletes were coming down to train at the 84 Olympics at UCLA. So many countries came, England, Russia, Germany, East Germany, all these countries came down to train with us. And then I became very good friends with John Wooden and the president of UCLA, and he saw what I was doing, and he came up to me, and I treated him on a couple injuries that he had, and he says, I couldn't even walk the other day. Now I'm walking today. It's amazing. So he
Wow.
asked me to come in, and he gave me a position there, an honorary molecular biology degree that he gave me. And he asked me to head up the Sports Medicine Research Center at UCLA. And that's how I got involved with everything. And then the coaches that I was working with, they asked the U.S. Olympic to have me on the team. And that's how I got involved with it. And I also had my own athletes that I was training for the '84 Olympics, like Ron Brown, and I was working with Carl Lewis and other people like that. So I had quite a few people. Bob Kersey had all the female athletes that I was training with.
So when you look at a lot of the athletes that you've had insight to, how good were their diets back then? Were they pretty crappy and
No,
they just were relying on good training and genetics, or were they dialed in back then?
oh
The
my
good
God.
ones.
I mean, Twinkies was their popular dish. Can
Of
you
course.
believe it?
Back then they were
Peanut
just
butter.
crazy.
Yeah, peanut
Yeah.
butter Reese's cups. That's what they ate. And that's why they
Wow.
were always inflamed and injured. And then when I worked in '85, '86 with the Raiders and Rams and Lakers, their diet was mostly pasta and bread and
Yeah, I
carbs.
mean, you're exercising so much, so from a caloric standpoint, insulin wise, you're going to be able to burn that off. But your fatty acid profile is so inflamed, so if you get injured, it's going to be hard to heal. Plus, you don't have any connective tissue building blocks coming in, so as you get injured, the pliability of that tissue is going to be just you get less pliable tissue, less ability to absorb force over time with injuries. It's crazy.
Ab- Absolutely. So what we did was we worked on nutrition with them, protein, eggs,
Mm.
fish, meat, and cut down the carbs like pasta and breads and less rice and potatoes. So we increased almost like a carnivore diet with these people.
Now,
And,
can you
and
do healthy starch? I mean, obviously they're burning a lot of carbs. Could you do starches like sweet potato and squash, or even white potato? Would you kind
oh
of
yeah,
consider those still more anti-inflammatory type of starches?
yes, yes.
But you were
As
trying to
long
keep the
as
grain and gluten back then out in the early '80s too.
Yeah, we knew it was leading to a lot of inflammation. I
Yeah.
was very fortunate at UCLA that I was involved with so many great minds. One of my patients was Roy Wolford, who was the father of caloric restriction diet. So I learned everything about restriction diet and what it contributes to and how it works on the body. And he took it too far into it. I did not. I kind of realized that we can't do a strict diet like that because we need the calories or we're going to have oxidative damage and stress. And the athletes need to eat. They need 6, 7 meals a day.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And they needed small protein and they needed the right amount of carbs from vegetables. They have to be cooked. And potatoes, they have to be mashed potatoes. Or rice, they have
Yeah.
to be white, and they have to be.
Yeah.
And we added butter with it, not ghee at that time because we didn't have ghee, but it was mostly butter that we used. We used
Right.
butter for all our training sessions with the athletes. And then,
Wow.
fortunately, I got many companies donating research to us, like supplements, like CoQ10 came from Japan. Didn't know anything about CoQ10. We started using it. So amazing results. We started
Wow.
using Pignogenol from France and started giving that to the athletes and saw an increase in oxygen levels. It was amazing. And then Knox Gelatin came over and supplementing us with Knox Gelatin powder,
Back then.
which
Wow.
then that's how I got into the collagen. Before I didn't know anything about it, and I started talking to the Knox Gelatin chemists at that time, and they were explaining to me how important it was in rebuilding and rehabbing. It was more for rebuilding, regenerating, and helping with injuries, recovering it faster. And that's what we use at that time. We use a packet of Knox Gelatin with vitamin C 3 times a day, and the increased results were amazing with that.
Wow.
And
Now,
that's when
let's talk about the amino acid difference with gelatin or collagen. Obviously, collagen peptides is probably even better because those long chain peptides are broken down, so they're better absorbed. Would you agree?
gelatin is a great product, but it has to still be broken down by the stomach. Okay, you need
Right.
hydrochloric acid. you need pepsin, and you need B6.
Yep.
Collagen is already broken down into peptides. I just knew how to do it even faster and better by
Hmm.
eliminating, by doing a certain enzymatic process to making collagen, which made it into a singling peptide. So you have what's known as a singling peptide collagen in your product. And
So
that's
let's
what
talk
you're,
about that. So what's a signaling peptide? What does that mean
well,
specifically?
what it
Obviously,
does, it
so
actually
just to
turns,
go ahead.
it turns
Go ahead.
on the singling effects of the peptides in the collagen. That's what it
Mm,
does. So you're going to get better utilization from it. That's all, I started it in an 84 college, and I was probably the only person out there that knew a little bit about it and was trying to find researchers out there. And there weren't that many companies making collagen. There was only a few companies. And then I started in the 90s, I started meeting a guy, Bob Busher from Great
mhm.
Lakes. He was the only other fellow that I knew was into gelatin and collagen at that time.
Mm.
He was more into gelatin, so Great Lakes was more of a gelatin thing. And then as I, got into it, I realized that you, as a chiropractor, your patients coming in are all cartilage damage, are ligaments, tendons,
Oh
muscles,
yeah,
and bone. And so I realized one of the most important foods we can supplement people with is collagen. And that's how I got
absolutely.
into the collagen business in the 20s, 2000s, because at that time I was just using whatever I could from anybody, it wasn't abundant at that time. Today, everybody's using it. I got David Asprey, Bulletproof, involved with it. He didn't know anything about it. I got Vital Proteins involved with when they came to my lecture at Expo West in Anaheim, and they were listening to my lecture. And that's how everybody got involved. They realized the importance of collagen. And one of the key importance of collagen is it's devoid of three amino acids. It's the only protein on the planet that's devoid of these three
Cysteine,
amino acids.
tryptophan, and methionine.
Yes, and they're
Got it.
leaders of mTOR, which are inflammatory compounds. They cause oxidative damage. They can lead to thyroid oxidation, thyroid damage. So it affects mitochondrial function, and that's the molecule that we all live on. It's mitochondria. That's the key. That's what I studied over 30 years ago, was how athletes train and why do they train differently in different countries, and what
Right.
makes a good athlete versus a bad athlete. Why I saw the Kenyans and Jamaicans and all these other athletes being so good at in track and field, it's because sunlight and mitochondria was the predominant thing in the 80s that I didn't even realize then yet, that I discovered later on was the key to everything. And the type of foods they ate, which was very gelatinous foods, collagen derived foods. That's what we ate,
No,
many hundreds of years ago, or maybe 30, 60 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We were more gelatinous people.
I want to dive a little bit deeper in there, and we can go. Then we can move on. But collagen is so important for me because one, like you said, we eat a lot more muscle meat, which is going to be more methionine, cysteine rich, right? Not
Right.
necessarily a bad thing, but we're missing the connective tissue because we always talk about old foods don't cause new disease. One of the biggest, oldest foods there was soups and bone broths, putting the bones in the pressure cooker or in the pot and really extracting those amino acids. So collagen is really high in hydroxyproline, proline, glycine. Both of those, one, are really high in connective tissue. Glycine is so important for gut health. That's, I think, part of the GAPS diet is a lot of these bone broths, which really, what's that healing property? It's that glycine to help with those enterocytes. So you have connective tissue, you have gut health, right? And they're also good precursors, especially glycine. That's a backbone for glutathione too. Can you comment a little more on that?
Yeah. Well, we know collagen is a perfect food, almost. As you get older, what do they give you in the hospital? Jello, right?
Yeah, except
Because
the sugar or the aspartame. Yeah.
yeah, besides the other things, yeah. But you're getting a sort of a good protein that helps with
Yeah.
recovery and rebuilding.
Yeah, it's
One of the
great protein.
things
Yep.
is we're eating a very inflammatory diet today. We're eating fried foods. The worst foods on the planet Earth for the last 30, 40, 50 years has been fried foods. Anything that is seed oil made with canola or even avocado oil, olive oil, any of these oils, they're very lipid oxidative. They cause mitochondrial damage and thyroid damage and causes
Even
to
avocado,
every.
though, isn't avocado a little bit higher of a smoke point, though? I know it's you always want to use a saturated fat. It's better. Your tallow, your coconut oil, but isn't it a little bit higher of a smoke point than the other ones, though?
Yeah, but in the body, the oxidative chain of these fats, fatty acid
Yeah.
composition, are very long, and so they're more exposed to oxidative damage. And the
Yep.
smaller the chain is, the less oxidative damage we're going to have, you know?
That's why
And
you want
that's the
saturated
key.
fatty acids, right? I mean, that's why
Yeah, that's why
McDonald's, they
you
did their
want
fries.
get
McDonald's did
everything
their
from
French fries in
ghee and
'89.
butter.
They did it beef tallow. They did beef tallow up to '89. Then they went to soybean oil. So yeah, if you're doing a
Absolutely.
tallow or some kind of saturated fat that has the doesn't have all the double bonds between the carbons, they're going to be a lot less prone for oxidation, right?
Yeah, so you want less of these linoleic acids, omega
Right.
6, which is the
Right.
most conducive problems we have today to every disease we know of. And aging is number one. My background was at UCLA, was studying aging, and athletic performance. And so I got into everything. What causes aging? It's a pathway that we take. If we take the right pathway, and don't make the wrong turns, we live longer and also we survive longer and we feel better and healthier. If we take the wrong pathways and eat fried foods and starches and carbs and in and out burgers, everything out there is conducive to medical uh, medication. That's what they want. They want the medications, and the
So
more you
essentially, if
get,
we
the
choose
more.
good fat, so if we choose good fatty acids, ideally we want to be choosing more saturated fats, probably more animal fats or coconut.
Exactly.
And if we choose probably on the more dressing side, avocado oil, maybe a dressing, olive oil, maybe more of a dressing. And then obviously you probably like cooking with ghee over butter just because it has that lactose and casein kind of more pulled out, right? Would you agree?
I love ghee. Ghee's my predominant butter that I use right now for everything. It has a higher point. It's very high in the antioxidant vitamin E, and it's very high in Gerald Pollack's book on
Yeah.
four phase of water,
Oh
and how
yeah.
to keep, we got to maintain that water in the cells. That's cells and gels, the engine of life. And I was very fortunate to meet Gilbert Ling on the phone. And
Mm.
Gilbert is probably the greatest scientist of our time who discovered how cells function and how energy works in the cells, in the cytoplasm of the mitochondria. And the MRI device was developed by Raymond Domanium, who we just lost recently. I'm so sad.
Oh.
He was a genius, and it was because of the water structure and the protein of the cells that was the basis for the foundation of how cells work. And that's how the MRI came up to play because of
Mm.
Gilbert Ling's work. And that's how Gerald Pollack discovered the cells and gels, the engine of life, and then the fourth phase of water. It all came around, it accumulated because of the knowledge of all these great minds we have today. And going back to collagen, one of the key things I
Yeah.
think is that collagen is on the nitrogen utilization, chart. Egg is maybe number one, and collagen's number two, and then meat. So, also the other thing what collagen does, it protects us from mTOR pathways,
Hmm.
inflammatory pathways, oxidative pathways. It the nutrients and the peptides and the proteins in the collagen balances us from
Can you
getting
go a little bit more
inflamed.
into what mTOR is, just so people have a little background?
mTOR is it's a rapamycin
Yeah.
compound, which helps to what it does when we're young. Okay, like we're growing up in the early 2 to 5, 10, 18 years old. We are growing. We need muscles. We need growth and repair, and we need cell growth. mTOR is part of that pathway. So that's what helps in helping cells replicate faster. So we get bones, we get muscles, we get organs,
Yep.
we get, but as we get to about 30 years old, these things can lead to damaging cells like senescence. They can lead to
Yep.
cancer cells. They can lead to diabetes, heart disease. They can overdo too much, and we don't want that extra growth at that period of time. We're already fully developed. We don't need it. So we need to keep it down. And it's the same thing with deuterium. The water deuterium is the same thing. We need it when we're young. Deuterium is a heavy hydrogen nuclear, that's found in all the water and foods all over the world. We need it when we're young. As we get older, it can disrupt the mitochondria from functioning and making ATP correctly. So it can damage it. There's a spin in the ATP process of the cytochrome 5, which makes all the electrons, takes the electron photons and protons from our food with oxygen and sunlight to make every single component of energy that's made in the ATP chain. And if we have too much deuterium in there, it slows down the spin cycle, so the batteries are not working as well. So
all right,
the
you're saying
body
a lot of
has.
things. I want to break a couple of things down. You're saying a lot of good things. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So first off, on the collagen, because you really went into that, right? Now, talk about collagen and mTOR. Is it because it's missing some of those big 3 amino acids? It keeps mTOR low. So essentially, mTOR good when you're younger, anabolic, protein, bone, but at some point, having it too high as you get older can cause this cancer growth. So collagen amino acids are in a profile that is going to limit mTOR. What else is that correct? And then what else can we do to also limit mTOR?
It's cutting down. Well, collagen has the best safety factors because it has zero of these 3 amino acids. So if you have a certain level of these amino acids, let's say leucine is a mTOR pathway. It's a branch chain amino acid, right?
Right.
But leucine has to be over 2,000 grams, 2,000 grams of leucine a day. If you keep it under 2,000 grams, like 1,000, you're not going to get mTOR pathway because there's not enough of those amino acids to switch it to it. And that's why collagen doesn't have these tryptophan, methionine, cysteine foods, so it's not going to promote it. But certain foods in nature, like, organ meats and meats in general, can do that. If you're eating a lot of it, it will produce mTOR pathways. And this research, the only known true research today is that was extension of lifespan by 40% was by the reduction of mTOR, by lowering methionine and tryptophan, especially methionine in the diet. Low methionine diet. Richard Miller, MD, PhD, published this work, and now it's well known out there in publication that life extension is really by lowering methionine and then cysteine and tryptophan.
So what else? You mentioned the omega-6, especially the processed omega-6, because it's really the omega-6 that's going to be from processing that's going to get oxidized and damaged and acidified. We have that. Does that affect mTOR? What about carbs? What about insulin resistance? What else in our diet and lifestyle can jack up mTOR?
Anything that is the rich foods that are in tryptophan, methionine, those cysteine. So if you have a lot of high cysteine foods, high methionine foods, like, you will. I mean, if you over process too much of these type of foods, and a lot of fruits and a lot of vegetables have high methionine and tryptophan. Think of this, yogurt, okay? Yogurt whey protein is very high in tryptophan and methionine, especially methionine. So any of the whey protein that people are using today that are above 25 years old, 28 years old, 30 years old. There's so many people using it in their milkshakes, in their athletic performance drinks. Whey protein has the highest form of methionine. So you keep constantly taking that, you will get mTOR. And I have seen that with professional lifters. They got increased heart disease, enlarged heart. They had cardiovascular damage. They had kidney failures. So I seen it with these athletes. So if you're going to have yogurt, have Greek yogurt because the whey protein is totally removed from that. So you're not getting
What
any
about
of the.
glutathione, though? Well, a lot of these amino acids, like cysteine, for instance, a lot of studies on N-acetylcysteine with all kinds of different things from lung health to glutathione levels to helping with virus stuff and viral replication and immune function. A lot of data on that being beneficial. How does that connect? Because we see a lot of data
Okay.
on some of these things being beneficial. Also, tryptophan, we know that can be really helpful for serotonin, sleep, and all that. How do those connect?
Okay. Glutathione is a very controversial thing. I never use it, never have, never will. I've been doing cancer research for almost 40 years, 50 years now. And one thing I learned from the Germans, they were the best in this field in the 80s when they were visiting me, in the 90s when I went to Mexico and worked with clinics.
Sure.
Glutathione is an antioxidant that protects cancer cells from chemo, radiation, and surgery. They know how to protect themselves. They know how to build defense systems, and glutathione is one of the key defense systems that cancer cells use to protect themselves from oxidative damage, from death, or whatever. There's another thing that we need to know. It's oxidation reduction, okay? Oxidation is how everything is electron flow into the chamber to make energy. In the end of all this is the reduction state. All the electrons are received and they need to be converted back to donation instead of receiving only. If we only receive electrons and don't know how to donate back, that's how we end up dying, and that's how we end up being sick, and that's how we start aging. It's called oxidation reduction, NAD, NADH, and there's one other thing that people don't understand. It's called glutathione, oxidative glutathione, and reduction glutathione. And everybody today is in that reductive state of glutathione, which is only grabbing electrons, but it's not converting it back to energy. And that's what we need to do as a living system. We need to have those things functioning. Oxidative reduction states low. NAD high, NADH low. Then we have the glutathione stage, the oxidative stage, and the reductive state. And oxidative.
So I want to break some of it down for the listeners to make sure we're on the same page. So when you're talking reduction is nothing more than a gain of electrons. You have an extra electron, and when we're talking oxidation, we've lost an electron. And so the goal with a lot of antioxidants, they're trying to come in there when they're in an oxidized state. They're trying to give off that electron to bring that electron back up to a stable place. Is that correct?
Right. But then a lot of a lot of the antioxidants are in the reduced state. Think of vitamin C. What is vitamin C? Vitamin C is an antioxidant, but in the cell, it's a oxidative state. In the normal chemistry of the cell or vitamin C supplements, they're in the reduced state. So they need to be converted inside the cell to dehydroxy acid, ascorbic acid, which is a oxidative state of vitamin C. Vitamin E is one of the few other ones that really is a very strong antioxidant that can be used as an anti-inflammatory, as an oxidative state vitamin, and not too many, a lot of your polyphenolics of, all your fruits and vegetables, especially your juices, they have a lot of flavonoids, and flavonoids are very important in reducing inflammation, but also
stress.
They're also reducing oxidative stress and promoting electron flow in the electron chamber because they can produce increased electrons and oxygen. And that's what we need.
How does the sodium potassium pump come into play? Because we know sodium potassium really important, and we know a lot of these vegetables have a lot of potassium. Large percent of the population is deficient in potassium. Where do those electrolytes come into play here?
Okay, that's Gilbert Ling has shown that the cells do not have sodium potassium pumps. They don't work that way.
Really?
That's Gilbert
That's
Ling.
like
That's
every
why
physiology textbook, though.
I know. Read Cells and Gels, The Engine of Life. Ray Peat is one of the best in the field in understanding sodium pumps, and
Oh, we
he
need
and some.
potassium. We need these electrolytes, though, right?
No, we don't really need it. We get enough of those in the cell. Here's what it is. If you study the electron mitochondria, Douglas Wallace, he's the father of mitochondria by far,
Sure.
and there's many others. Every disease, 99% of all disease is based on what we call mitochondria decay. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's the damaging effects of mitochondria. Okay?
Okay.
And that's all the diseases out there. And so what we're seeing is that in nature, there is no energy is required by the cytoplasm of the cell. And that's where the mitochondrium takes electrons and makes energy, ATP, and that's how the cell survives. And water is key in structuring the cells, the gels of the cells, and so is protein. And that's why it looks like a jello. And having that's the key to everything out there. And so if you read the book Cells and Gels, you read Gilbert Ling's work, you read do you know Thomas Cohen, the MD?
Yeah.
He is very controversial because he was against the vaccine and all that and the
He
virus.
was up in San Francisco, right?
He was in San Francisco and he's in New York now.
Oh,
And
he's in New
he
York
has,
now. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, he's doing consultation and he's 100% right about the cells and gels of how the cells exist today. They don't have any sodium, potassium found. You need sodium and you need potassium as an electrolyte for nerve function, for electricity to occur in the body because we're a DC current. We're not an AC, we're a DC current. That's Robert Becker's book on
Yep.
body
Body
electric.
electric. Yep.
And I had a chance to work with him and when I was at UCLA. And the guy was a brilliant scientist. And that we're all a DC electrical system. Everything works on that. And it's all on low frequencies and low hertz, and everything is low Gauss. We're a very extreme low Gauss human being. And when we're under a lot of high Gauss, we get damage. And so if you have a chance, read Cells and Gels by Gerald Pollack. Read Gilbert Link's book, Ray Peat. He's got millions of articles on the sodium pump. And then Thomas Cohen's work and Jack Kruse on who's a neurosurgeon on biohacking the mitochondria with sunlight. They all know about the cells now. They understand, and that's how they know how to work with the cells and fix it again. And that's what I'm doing today, is understanding chemistry and how it started 303 billion years ago, how it all came into play.
So, all right. So we put a lot of things out here, but in regards to it, like the average person listening, they're like, okay, like, what am I going to do? What's the action item? So give them one or two things that they can do to help improve the cells and gels, the mitochondria. I mean, outside of, we already talked about a couple of things with processed food. We already talked about sunlight, collagen, having the mTOR, the omega-6. What else can be done kind of low-hanging fruit wise?
I think going back to how we were created, okay, and who we are, okay, and what chemistry of life created us. 600 million years ago, sunlight was starting to develop. I'm just going back to a little history so you understand who we are.
Sure.
The sunlight was developing and was maturing, and chlorophyll was present 600 million years ago, but it was needed by plants. And then 500 million years ago, the sun developed even stronger, and UV light, A, B, and C, was the foundation of the sunlight. That's the strength of the sunlight. And it was maturing 500 million years ago. And guess what? That's what helped to create the hemoglobin, which was the iron part of the blood. Not the magnesium is part of the plant. But then the mitochondria was developing because at that period of time, the UV came through the ozone layer and tripled the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. And that's what created life, all of us. So that's what helped with us was the sunlight. And the sunlight and the mitochondria was perfect. The oxygen levels was perfect. Thermodynamic temperatures of the ocean and the land was perfect. And that's why things started developing, humans and everything. So going back today, we live in an indoor world. Okay? All the food we can eat today, it doesn't make a difference because what we need is the function of the mitochondria, and that is stimulated by the whole spectrum of the sun, not just a portion of the spectrum. The ATP cycles, the cell electron transport, C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5 requires photosynthesis to occur in order to make energy in the food. So we need to be exposed in the sun more in the early in the morning, so we get our circadian going, our pineal gland, and our thyroid going. That's how we get it stimulated. Then at lunchtime, we need to expose ourselves 30 to 60 minutes with no shirt to get vitamin D. And you need cholesterol to make vitamin D. So you cannot deprive yourself of the cholesterol foods. That's how you're going to get sick. And then again, you need the reduction of blue light at night. So you need to escape blue light. And that's where you try to get some sunlight in the evening because of different spectrum of light. So we're exposed to blue light damage, artificial lighting, and it was all discovered by a guy named Tesla when he developed the AC current. Remember that? And what did they operate in the 1800s? Kerosene in the street. So we were using artificial lighting then. And that's what started the decay of the human population since then. And then the other thing is realize we need good food. We need to get good water, not fluoride. Fluoride is a damaging effect in water. We need to get non-fluoridated water. We need to eat a higher amount of protein and less starches and carbs and not some. We don't. Vegetables are good, but they're not because they can cause a lot of oxalates and oxidative damage to the
anti-nutrients in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of estrogenic foods in nature. So
and can you get enough protein from animal products? Can you be a vegan vegetarian in your mind and be healthy and get your protein from animal products strictly?
You have to be from animal products only. That's how we do.
And why though? Why?
Well, did I lose you?
No, I'm here. You're going. All right. Well, you're kind of getting your stuff here. I'll kind of riff on it a little bit. I mean, the reason why I think Dr. Bernd may be a big fan of animal protein, I think I am as well, obviously, is going to be just the amino acid profile. You're going to get all your top 8 or 9 essential amino acids with a lot of vegetarian proteins. You got to combine them. And when you combine them, usually you're missing either a methionine or a lysine or a protein. You got to combine them. The problem is when you combine them, you get a lot of extra carbohydrates. When you typically combine animal or vegetarian proteins, rice, beans, whatever, quinoa, usually it's about a 60 to 70% starch to your 15 or 20 grams of protein. So you end up getting a lot of carbohydrate. So people that tend to do okay on a vegetarian, vegan diet, they tend to be more ectomorphs, tend to be people that do well on high carb foods. If you're more prone to insulin resistance like I am, or most of the population, you're going to get too much carbohydrates for you and for your activity level. And so you really got to choose good animal proteins where you get the proteins, you get the fats. Obviously, you're also getting less omega-6, less of the inflammatory foods that are going to be in those vegetarian proteins. So it's good to get it from animal sources that are pasture-fed, naturally raised, grass-fed, whether it's eggs, chickens eating bugs, whether it's beef and grass and cows and grass, whether it's chickens, whether it's lamb, pasture-fed diet. It's going to shift that fatty acid profile. and that fatty acid is more in a natural state. It's going to be more anti-inflammatory, nutrient dense, and you're going to get a lot more nutrition in the animal product. So we lost Dr. Bernd here, so I'm going to just keep on riffing unless he can jump back on here and just try to provide a lot of value for y'all. And if you want to kind of come in here in the chat, guys, and just put some questions in, I'll feel free and rip off some of that. So just summarize, collagen, really helpful, really good building blocks, connective tissue for your joints, ligaments, tendons. You're not going to get that animal protein. So love collagen. Again, I worked with Dr. Bernd to kind of formulate my own collagen that has the peptide form. We'll put links down below where you guys can get it. The problem with a lot of collagen on the market, they're made with sulfuric acid. So when you blend it in coffees and teas, you taste it. It's got this really not so good aftertaste. And so when you use proteolytic enzymes, it's going to blend better. It's not going to have the aftertaste. And then you got these signaling proteins in there, which are really important. So if you have joint issues, especially as you get older and you start to see your gaps in your x-ray start to drop a little bit with the hip or the knee, and you start to go bone on bone, you need the connective tissue building blocks to build back up that joint space. Very important. If you don't bring the raw material in, you're going to have a problem. Next big thing is you need the omega, good quality fatty acids, more from animal. If you're going to do more of the vegetable, make sure it's keeping on the low temperature side. Very important. I'm a big fan. Dr. Bernd is more of a carb guy, but you can see him. He's a leaner kind of wiry guy, right? He's going to do really good with more carbohydrates, those kind of things. You got to adjust your carbohydrates for your body type. So if you're kind of an ectomorph, think of that as the dancer, the basketball player, leaner, taller person, then you need to adjust. You could probably handle more carbs. If you're the mesomorph, that's the in between. I'm kind of the mesomorph. I'm kind of like the linebacker, right? You can be lean, but you can also get big too. And then you have the endomorph. That's the lineman, right? That's the person that's more prone to be big and gain weight with carbohydrate. You have to figure out where you sit. And then you also have to look at your activity level. If you're walking 10, 15,000 steps a day, doing a little bit of lifting, you can always get away with more carbs. The more active you are, the less active you are, you got to adjust that. Oh, we got Dr. Bernd back on here. Let's see if I can plug him back in. All right, Bernd, we were just kind of riffing. I was riffing a little bit here on collagen and fatty acids, and
yeah,
we were actually
had
talking
a little
about collagen. Yeah, no big deal. We're just going to roll with it. Can you go back and just talk about joint issues? Have you seen a lot of case studies, or in your experience, people with bone on bone or serious joint issues? Have you found they've been able to build that joint back up with collagen?
You know what? In combination with your the work that we do and using red light, infrared light, heat lamps, I think the combination, we definitely need collagen for the recovery. I found an interesting study.
Have you seen clinically, though, you can build that joint back up when it's already worn down? When you're like, hey, I may need a knee or hip replacement in a couple of years. Can you avoid that? Can you build it back?
If you still have cartilage left, okay, and I think, most of us do, if we use a certain, I found that if we go from 60 grams to 100 grams of collagen, there's a greater chance of recovery and rebuilding and restructuring the cells. Yes. If we get,
oh, we lost them, folks. I'm going to keep riffing here. So, yeah, Bernd's talking about bringing that collagen up to 100 grams or so. Again, usually you get about 10 to 15 grams per scoop. I do about 20 or 30 grams a day. I put it in my coffee. With my collagen, it blends well. It just acts like a creamer. It just thickens it up. And then I'll throw a little bit of butter, MCT oil, and blend it up. I try to get good fats because you got to think of eating good, healthy fats. That's support for your cell membranes, right? Cell membrane health is so important because that's how your cells communicate. And the more you consume fatty acids that are going to be more on the oxidized side, that's going to create oxidative stress. That's going to deplete your antioxidant reserves. It's also going to make your cell membrane stiff and inflexible. We're just talking about cell membrane stiffness with all the excess fatty acids here. But go ahead with the collagen and the joint recovery.
So I feel if we use a combination of vitamin D, calcium, and a good calcium diet, and keep the collagen up about 45 to 60 grams a day, which is, and I've had 100 grams a day with many of my athletes. I seen faster results from collagen. I've seen better results with the higher level of collagen in the grams, adding calcium, vitamin D, and light therapy, and as much as heat we can generate into that area, so we can
Do you
get
prefer
better
more beef
circulation.
collagen over like chicken or a fish multi collagen? Is there a reason why you like the beef better versus the other?
The reason I like beef better, and I've used it only pretty much in my whole career, going back to the 80s. Maybe a little pork at that time because of gelatin.
Yeah.
Um, at least today I know I'm getting quality. With beef, I know I can get grass-fed beef. Chicken, there's no way of getting grass-fed chicken. They're mostly
Yeah.
using soy and corn, right? And,
Yeah, it's a
and
problem.
so you're getting hormones in there. You're getting estrogen. And then in the no control of the environment that's in, because there's so much contamination today in the water and what they're feeding them. So I don't really use that either. It's all because of the process of how they're made. If I can get collagen and I get beef that's grass-fed 100% all the way to the end, I know I'm getting quality and I'm getting,
Yeah,
consistent results.
that makes
So
sense. That's very good.
yeah,
And how does the what the animal eats, whether it's cows eating grass or chickens eating bugs, how does that affect the amino acids? Do you notice like collagen from, let's say, factory farm chickens or factory farm cows? Does the amino acid spectrum in that collagen change? What shifts?
in collagen, the only thing I notice is the quality of the collagen comes from a good source of grass-fed cows. Okay. Um, so I can tell the difference with my clients and patients for years. Their response, their results are better. I'm getting
More anti-inflammatory?
yeah, and I'm not getting any of the inflammatory conditions, and I don't have to worry about any of the hormonal factors that may be
Yeah,
found
that
in
makes sense.
residues, in really low
Residues, yeah.
residues in these things, know. And then the vitamin E level in collagen is a little bit higher in grass-fed animals than, and they're lower in PUFAs, the polyunsaturated fats.
Yeah.
So I'm getting almost none of that in my grass-fed.
That's good. So someone else listening here, we talked about sunlight. That's easy. Obviously, we don't want to get a sunburn. We talked about mTOR and insulin and fasting and fatty acids. What else can someone do to kind of help to kind of start signaling those healthy anti-aging epigenetics, right? The genetics are just kind of what's there. That's the hardware that's already written. We're talking about the epigenetics, which is the software to help maximize that hardware use. What else can we do to optimize our epigenetics to be in that anti-aging, healthy aging kind of path?
Well, eating a good meal, right? Having the right
Of
proteins,
course.
almost reducing the levels of polyunsaturated oils from seed oils. Um, the other thing is,
Anything else more nuanced? Anything that like
yeah,
my
like
listeners know
reducing
that they
stress.
get that. Anything else that's more nuanced that they may not have heard before?
Reducing stress, go for walks,
Hmm.
get in the sun more
Hmm.
often, eliminate the amount of exposure indoors with blue light technology. You know,
Mm.
put if you go into bed, here's the most important thing you can do. At a certain time in the evening, do not look at your video or cell phone after 5, 6, 7 in the evening. Okay, get your body and mind ready for sleep and regeneration and anabolic steroids and all the stem cell that comes at night that grows back. Get rid of all the Wi-Fi. Turn it off. Do not have your cell phone in the bedroom. Put it on airport mode, or
Hmm.
I turn the whole phone off, and I never have my Wi-Fi on during the days, most of the days that I'm inside, and I'm very rarely inside. And so I try to keep my bedroom free of any EMF, electrical, magnetic or radiation. And I have a meter, and I use that meter to give me sort of an idea what's going on.
Which
And
meter do you like?
I like the tri-feel. That's the one I
I feel
use
I have
because
one over there.
yeah, and that's one I use every day for everything. You know, I go into people's home and I see what's going on, and I can say, here's your EMF levels. You need to reduce that. And the only way to do that is unplug most of your electrical, keep your refrigerator, yeah, and you know, certain things on, but you can pretty much turn everything off. And if you can, the best thing is get a ley line. You know, I know we're out of it. People don't even know there's ley lines anymore. But you
What's
know,
that?
we don't. A ley line is where you're plugged in everything. You know,
A
and
landline, a landline for
yeah,
the internet.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, landline. I meant land.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, some of my
Um,
patients, if they're, you can also just try killing your breaker box to your house. Just kill the power for the night. Again, may not work
yes, yes,
if you
yes.
got a fridge going, but you can at least kill your room if you want. Again, it just depends upon how chronically sick you are too. You know, the more sick
You're
you are,
right.
the more you can decrease that electromagnetic stress. If you're pretty healthy, you could probably that's probably something you can adapt to. How do you manage the 5G stuff? Because that's kind of everywhere now, and these things are
No, you
smaller. It's
can't.
harder to avoid.
I go in the sun pretty much every morning, every afternoon. I'm 2 or 3 hours in the sun. If I'm exercising outdoors totally. I'm walking, I'm grounding myself. I walk in concrete, or the best ideal place to walk is in the beach. You know, being by the beach is ideal. That means there's no 5Gs there, and you're grounding your body. And you know, getting back to nature. That's really who we are. And try to limit the indoor as much as you can, unless you know, get John Ott's Lumaran or any of those full spectrum lightings. Start using natural lighting back in the inside. You know, no LEDs, and you know, try to avoid that and get more of a full spectrum light where it almost gives you the same resonance of a sunlight. You know, and that's what you
Love
want
it.
to do. And eliminate as much as you can 5G. Just don't be near it. And like I said, don't be on the phone, don't be on a video, and avoid it. And I wear blue light glasses for the last 10 15 years anyway at night. So if I'm exposing myself to anything, I always wear my blue lights, and I have it all over my house now. Blue light lamps, you know, where they
Excellent.
produce red lamps.
I love it, Dr. Bernd. Very good. Well, anything else you want to highlight or leave with the listeners? I think you kind of put some really good information out there. Fatty acids, collagen, the right types of collagen. We talked about sleep. We talked about light. Obviously, with light, you don't want to get burned, right? You want that minimal erythemal dose, morning hours,
Yeah.
right? 9 or so later on, but just don't get burned. Would you agree?
Well, here's how you do it. Your body you know, exposing yourself to UV light is how life started. Okay, that's the creation of every living system in our planet. Okay, and UV is part of the importance of the mitochondria and building the mitochondria and all that. So
Mhm.
what we need to do is, you know, don't if you expose yourself slowly every day a little bit to sunlight, you're not going to get burned. Okay, burn only happens when you have a bad diet. If you eat a lot of polyunsaturated oils,
Or an extreme
number one,
exposure. You haven't acclimated your skin to it.
yes, I have no problems because I'm in the sun all the time. So if you go out in the sun and you expose yourself 30 minutes, 15, 20 minutes in the morning, you're protecting yourself already by doing that. Then at lunchtime, 12 to 3, where UV is the highest, you're not going to be damaged by it so much because you already developed a defense mechanism against that through
You got
the
that
early
that solar
sunlight.
callus, right? That solar
Right.
callus, right?
And if you're worried about it, take an aspirin. And if you take an aspirin before you go out in the sun, you won't get burned. And this was a study done in Israel and Australia about
Hmm.
1990s, that sunlight, taking an aspirin before going out on the sun doesn't cause any inflammation or sunburn. And that was one of the true studies that they done in Australia, the papers I read, it was phenomenal. So I take aspirin every day, especially at night, to protect myself against clotting mechanisms and strokes and cardiovascular things.
And
So,
why are you choosing aspirin over ginger or some kind of something a little bit more natural? Because doesn't aspirin have other type of potential side effects though, from a
no,
gastrointestinal upset or maybe a liver stress?
when I attended the anti-aging conference in Las Vegas, one of the people I met at the one of the speakers was the head of Bayer aspirin researcher,
Yeah.
and his whole speaking assignment that day was on FOX2 gene. It's an anti-aging gene that's seen to be found in certain animals like, worms and mice, and now
Sure.
shown to be in humans. Aspirin actually extended the FOX2 gene. So you're not going to get diseases in aging. And aspirin has probably more clinical studies than any other nutrient on the planet today for its anti-inflammatory condition, for its mitochondria function. I used to give my athletes coffee and aspirin to increase uncoupling mechanism, which increases mitochondria function in the cells. So it has so many potentials, it is a truly, instead of causing reduction state in the cells, which we were talking about, how oxidative states is the key in keeping electron flow going into the mitochondria and keeping our redox cycling function going. So we're donating electrons back to the energy chamber. Aspirin does that, and when you take it with coffee in the morning, it doubles the uncoupling mechanism. So our athletes, it's almost like a steroid for them. They can see a difference. And I've had people say, this is worse than a steroid. I've never seen anything so good as aspirin in coffee. And if you take it at night, it lowers the inflammatory condition. And one thing I learned from a cardiologist at Harvard, was that it protects us from ever getting a stroke. When we get up in the morning, our cortisol levels are high. The potential for a blood clot to occur is greater at 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning than any other time of the day. It's because we're just getting up,
Mondays,
and
right?
and the blood is getting very stagnated, and there's a clotting mechanism, and aspirin protects that. It prevents the platelet aggregation, so it doesn't happen.
What about
So that's
curcumin
what.
though? I've seen a lot of drug companies kind of focusing on the research of curcumin with anti-cancer. It's everywhere. Plus, we know curcumin is really good for that platelet aggregation reduction, the blood thinning effects. What about using that too? What do you think about other natural compounds?
It's interesting. I work with Elizabeth Mazzio, Mazzio, University of Florida, AMM. Okay. She's the leading world expert in inflammatory compounds from herbs from all over the world. Okay.
Sure.
And I've been involved with her for over 10 years now, and I'm on her board. And curcumin was not even close to being the highest in the anti-inflammatory or anti-tumor cancer things. There were so many other compounds like boswellia. If you're going to take anything, boswellia would be my second choice from aspirin, because it has a COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitor.
Okay,
Not
so you
too,
like boswellia,
only aspirin.
making sense.
Yeah. And so there are many other herbs. She found that a lot of the Chinese 1,000-year-old herbs, 2,000-year-old, have tremendous medicinal benefits in anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor. And frankincense is one of the big ones, and boswellia and
Same thing,
ashwagandha.
right?
Ashwagandha is very good. I would pick those over curcumin, and turmeric would be my second choice. My down the line 10th, 11th, 12th, because turmeric is the whole plant and has much more medicinal purposes.
So if you had to choose, like with a drug like aspirin or ibuprofen, you would choose the aspirin any day?
Every day, because it
Yeah.
also has a key molecule in there that we discovered in one of the research at Ohio State University Medical
Hmm.
Center and at Florida AM. It promotes ATP production, mitochondria. Ibuprofen, Tylenol has a reductive state. Aspirin is an oxidizing state. It helps with oxidation. So that's why I would choose that because of the oxidative state. The oxidation of aspirin is very high. So it helps with mitochondria uncoupling. So we're getting more ATP production, where Tylenol and all the other ones do not have that.
Aspirin's
So,
found profound effects on mitochondria as it uncouples mitochondria oxidation and induces mitochondrial permeability transition. Interesting. Oh, that's
mm-hmm.
cool. Yeah. I'll have to take a
Yeah,
look at that.
yeah. I
Very
have
good.
hundreds of papers on aspirin, so we can move on that anytime. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's very good. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, Dr. Bernd. Very cool.
Okay.
Anything else you want to leave the listeners with? Dr. Bernd,
Well,
freelander.com. We'll put links down below and we'll put some reference links to the collagen that we're talking about. And there'll be show notes up with everything kind of transcribed for y'all. So if you want to go through there and actually read the transcription, that may be easier for y'all. Anything else you want to leave the listener with, Dr. Bernd?
well, starting out the day, get some sunlight. Have a good breakfast. Don't skip on
Protein.
protein. Protein
Yeah.
is so crucial that, again, in the utilization of nitrogen, there was no plant protein on the top list. This is scientific studies that were done. And so you want to stay on a good protein diet. You want to make sure you get plenty of sunlight. You do the right exercise. Don't overdo it. Don't get into oxidative stress. Occasionally be careful with fasting too, because fasting is a stressor. The body goes
It
under
is.
stress. So
It's
you don't
stress.
want to go on too much. People are doing too much fasting and not getting enough protein. And so the quality of repair and regeneration is reducing itself. So we're seeing more injuries. We're seeing more cartilage from, like you probably have. Everybody's talking to me in the gym, say, well, I got to get knee replacement, this replacement, that replacement, because, they're stressing their joints out and not eating the right foods. And like you said, collagen is necessary in keeping our cartilage up and ligaments and tendons and
Yeah.
muscles up, but it lowers the inflammatory mechanism that is produced by majority of all the foods we eat today. And that's all the fried foods and all the carbs and starches and
Yeah.
wheats and grains. And we got Roundup in all our foods anyway.
The residue.
So that's another
Yeah.
problem. We haven't even talked about Roundup, and how it's damaging the mitochondria. It's
Gut
literally
lining too.
damaging the mitochondria. It's causing
Yep.
ATP damage. And
That
that's
makes sense.
another
One last
study.
question I wanted to hit you with. So we talked about kind of cardiovascular exercise, right? There's a lot of different types of cardio you can do. There's some data on just kind of that long-term steady state type of exercise being harder on your adrenals, more catabolic. But there's data out there on Tabata or interval type of training is also, I think it's a couple of people out there. Peter Attia has kind of brought it to light, the zone 2 type of cardio. Where you're keeping your heart rate in that mid to low 100s. You're still able to talk while you're doing some exercise, whether it's rowing or an elliptical. What's your take on different types of cardio and their application, whether it's an interval, Tabata, zone 2? What do you like? What do you recommend for the average
You
person?
know, being an athlete specialist, exercise physiologist, I have changed my attitude to a lot of these things from the beginning when we were excessively training people. I have
Yeah.
learned more in the last 20 years about how to preserve the mitochondria, how not to
Yep.
damage it. Okay. So if I do anything, I like walking. I don't want to stress my body out anymore. Okay. I've been an Olympic athlete. I've been a professional athlete. And I've seen the injuries that come with it. I'm very fortunate that I never had an injury in my young life, until about 60 when I had to replace my hip because of the excessive wear and tear of my body as an Olympic athlete, training 5 different professional teams, coaching 3 Olympic teams, 80, 84, and 88. It was too much. So
Yeah.
I find that it is best to do some walking and some concentric workout. What's a concentric workout?
Shortening the muscle.
Concentric, shortening the muscle, but on your way back down, you still want to use resistance. So you're using resistance in both directions, like slow push-up, 10-second push-ups, where you only count to 10 seconds going up,
Yep.
going down 10 seconds, holding it, holding
10
it.
seconds the whole way. That's a long contraction. Woo.
That was our studies in the 80s at UCLA, was concentric and short 10-second workouts. So when you're doing a curl, you take, I'm trying to show you, it's the curl goes, you're
Yep.
going like the bicep, and you
Yeah,
go
I can show you
down,
on mine. So we're short.
slow, yeah.
So
And you
slow.
do
It's
10
a 10
seconds
second
up,
lower, 10 seconds.
yep, same thing. You get a better workout in a shorter rep than you need. You don't need that many reps.
I mean, I'm a big fan of slower eccentric because the problem is it prevents you from lifting too heavy weights. And it's people
Yeah.
lifting too heavy with crappy form that bounce the weight or that hurt their
Yeah.
back in a deadlift or a squat. So when you have that slow eccentric, it's really hard to hurt yourself on the
Yeah.
exercise side. Also,
So
I was thinking about this here. You got guys like Tom Brady who are just playing forever. Is he consuming collagen? What do you think he's doing? Obviously, we got the book. He's kind of autoimmune paleo guy. What's he doing to kind of keep himself longevity wise with his joints and everything else? You have any inside ball game on that?
Well, you know, when I was starting to work with a lot of the athletes, we were introducing hyperbaric chambers. We were introducing infrared saunas in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knew about it. Today, most of your athletes are using, you know, many different forms. They're using infrared saunas. They're using
Yep.
infrared light therapy. They're using
Yep.
heat. They're using vibrational things, shock wave.
Yep.
A lot of them are getting PRP. They're getting
Yep.
ozone therapy. I can tell you a lot of these professional athletes are becoming more aware of what's going on. I knew Tom Brady. I played basketball with him when he was in high school in Sierra
Because
High
he was
School.
in San Mateo. Because you
Yeah.
live right down the street from him in San Mateo.
Yeah,
He went to Sierra.
I gave him a couple of adjustments, you know, quietly at the gym.
Yeah.
I knew he was a very bright individual, and you have
Yeah.
to be very bright. Like Howie Long was my favorite athlete overall.
Yeah.
Okay, he's my first favorite athlete that I worked with at the Raiders. And at that period of time, he was very bright. He understood diet, and he understood you needed to do a lot of flexibility, like Pilates, yoga, or stretching. Jerry Rice is like that. Jerry was very much into stretching. Tom is much more into that as well because
More pliability work. He talks about it.
yeah, he doesn't do a lot of weight training. And when Howie Long started working out with Lyle Alzado, he started getting disc herniation and hamstring and calf damage, and that's how I met him. And I think you don't want to do too much weight training. You do just enough, but you got to do flexibility. And if you don't do that, your career is not going to be long. You need to elongate the body. You need to do it all right. And I think people are becoming smarter, you know. And I think nutrition is very important. I can only tell you the athletes I work with, I cut down their carbs. I increased their proteins and fruits, etc., so that they have a better quality of health as they're working out.
I love it, Dr. Bernd. Well, let's put a bookend on this. Let's bring this conversation back up. I'll have you back on in a few months so we can continue the dialogue. I appreciate it. We'll put links to find you, Dr. Bernd, Friedlander.com. Anything else you want to leave the listeners, Doc?
No, just enjoy life. Don't get into everything, you know, stay away. Medicine really is eating right, getting sunlight, little exercise. That's the medicine. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. You can live without taking any blood pressure medication or other medications because nature was there. That's what we started. And that's what we need to get back to, is live outside, eat right, and get plenty of natural lighting and enjoyment in your life. Just let food be your nature, but now your sunlight too.
Dr. Bernd, I appreciate it. You're the man. Great chatting with you. We'll talk soon. You take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Talk to you then.